Yes, lads, what is going on? You are all very welcome to Season 5, Episode 2 of the Troy Sports Podcast. In this episode, we are joined by Simeon Birnbaum, and Simeon is the biggest thing in terms of high school running at the moment, who is now committed to becoming an Oregon Duck for next year. He recently finished up his high school athletics career, becoming national champion, beating athletes like Lex and Leo Young, continuing his villain arc and taking down the good guys, setting a new 2 mile national record, running a 3:57 in the mile. Also previously, that is not his first time breaking 4 minutes in the mile. He done that one time before, and it was an absolute honor to have Simeon on the podcast. I got in touch with Simeon back a couple of months ago when he first broke the 4 minute barrier in the mile as a high schooler, and now he has gone on to do such great things. Myself and Simeon obviously discuss breaking the 4 minute barrier for the first time, setting a new 2 mile world record, becoming the fourth fastest ever high school miler in a time of 3:57. The villain arc that he is undertaken, and the media has also undertaken against Leo and Lex Young. We talk about rivalries in terms of athletics, and not with it being not such a, I suppose, good guy sport, and creating a few rivalries and making the sport a little bit more entertaining on and off the track. Of course, Simeon, Leo and Lex are great friends off the track. They cooled down together after the national championships, and they will also be on podcasts at the same time, bringing us more great content over the next coming weeks. And we obviously talk about Simeon shushing Leo Young after the national championships, and why he decided to become and commit to the Oregon Ducks, even though it wasn't his first choice. Following in the footsteps of athletes like Cooper Tier, Cole Hawker, getting to train and race on Hayward Field so many more times, and all the great stuff happening over in Oregon as well. We also discuss the plans for the future that Simeon has in place in terms of his US trials and championships coming up now next week, and obviously his goals for the future in terms of racing in the World Championships and the Olympic Games. Unfortunately, he will have to sit this one out in Budapest this summer, but over the coming years we'll definitely be seeing Simeon in a USA singlet racing on the highest stage. If you're watching this on YouTube, you can see the camera quality is absolutely amazing. I have a whole brand new setup for the podcast. Took out the old Windows computer and I got a new iMac installed as well. Have the new cameras set up. Unfortunately for this episode, there's still a little bit of tweaking I need to do. I think my audio and my microphone's audio through the Skype call was picked up instead of through the OBS software. So unfortunately my audio quality isn't 100% through this episode, but it's definitely something I'll be tweaking as I go on and set up everything 100% in terms of the new setup. It looks absolutely amazing. I have my vertical monitor here with all my questions for my guest. I have the Skype call up on the iMac itself. Of course, I have the brand new professional Nikon Lumix camera in front of me, where if you're watching this on YouTube, you can see the amazing quality of that compared to the old webcam. And this is literally just with my bedroom light on. If I turn this off now, even that quality is amazing with just the glare of the screen alone. So I'm absolutely loving the new iMac setup. If you are listening to this over on Spotify or any podcast app, head down to the show notes where you can find the link to head over to the YouTube to see the brand new camera quality. Like I said in the last episode of the podcast, where I was joined by Jake Smith, I do still need to do a solo episode of the podcast to get you all up to date on everything going on in my fitness and running world. But for now, I'm getting the opportunity to interview all the best athletes in the world, so it's an absolute privilege. I'm loving the podcast now at the moment. We're back on the podcast grind with the brand new setup. I'll also be heading to the Morton Games again this year. That video done absolutely amazing last year, so we'll be picking up so many more live interviews there as well. So make sure to stay tuned. Once again, in the description and in the show notes, you can head over to the Troy Sports.official Instagram account to keep up to date on everything going on over there. But without further ado, in Season 5, Episode 2 of the Troy Sports Podcast, this is Simeon Birnbaum. All right, lads. So we are joined on the show with Simeon Birnbaum. Simeon, thank you so much for coming on. I got back in touch with you back when you broke the 4 minute mile barrier back earlier in your high school days, and now that things have taken off even further in your athletics career, from becoming national champion in your final year, and of course you're going to be a duck next year. We'll get into all of that as the episode goes on, and setting a new 2 mile national record as well just last week. So a lot has happened since the first time I got in touch. So really great having you on the show today. And yeah, I'm going to let you take it away, introduce yourself a little bit, and then we'll just go from there.
Yeah, no, you did a pretty good job. Yeah, as you said, I'm a middle distance runner from America. I run track and cross country. Just graduated high school, and I'm really excited about my future.
Definitely. So very, very modest and humble introduction there, especially with the great amount of running you've been doing over the past couple of weeks. I suppose before we get into that, like we do with a lot of the guests on the show, we'll start back when you first got into running, and we'll make our way through, I suppose, to the current day where a lot of great things are happening for you on the athletic scene. So take us back to when you first got into running, because I know you have a bit of an interest in ice hockey as well.
Yeah, so my elementary days, I lived in Canada, and obviously, ice hockey is like the main sport there. So that was my original sport. I started when I was like 4 or 5 years old, and then my dad, he was a runner. Both my parents were runners, and so naturally they wanted me to get into the sport. But where we lived in Canada, they didn't have any sort of running program. It wasn't part of the school or anything. So he started a running club, and it was just like very simple, mostly games. Pretty much anyone was welcome. So that was my introduction to the sport. Was just kind of just having fun. The longest runs he would do were probably like half a mile to a mile. We'd have like maybe race 3 times within a 3 month period. That the the camp kind of went. So very chill introduction. And then when I moved to the States, I was 12 years old. That was in sixth grade. And then I started running for like a proper school team, and started training for both cross country and track. And then I took it fully seriously and quit playing ice hockey when I was in 10th grade.
And before you took athletics seriously, was ice hockey, I suppose, was ice hockey in the same element in your brain where athletics is now, in terms of how far you wanted to go in the sport?
Yeah, usually when I pick something up, I want to be extremely good at it. So earlier on, it was more of a thought that I wanted to go far with ice hockey, but as I started to run more, I realized that I was quite a bit better at that. So naturally, I had to choose between the sports, like once you get to a high level, especially with the different body types required. And I saw more of a future in running, and I think I made the right choice.
No, definitely. And obviously you're still young at the moment. You still have your entire athletics career ahead of you. But up until this point, you've done amazing stuff over the past couple of years. When was it? Not even too long ago. Again, because of how young you are, did you realize how good you were at athletics?
Yeah, I've always been like naturally gifted in that way. Like whenever we had PE, I was always one of the best at the games we would play. So I was just naturally gifted with a lot of athletic ability. But with running, I wasn't too sure because like obviously I was pretty good at it compared to like people like from where I was from. But like looking at like national rankings or like comparing my times from people my age, like I saw that I was quite a bit behind them and that they were quite a bit better than me at the time. But I think it was definitely junior year where I realized that I could become like one of the best for my age, and like if I could do that, it probably wouldn't be too hard to become one of the best out of everyone someday.
Definitely, yeah. I suppose it's a case of working up through your age and then inevitably becoming one of the best in the country. And that is what happened in terms of a high school level for you over the past couple of weeks. And once again, we'll get into all that great success now in a moment. Obviously, you're under the 4 minute mile. You've done it one or two times now, like you mentioned at the start of the episode. That's initially when I got in touch with you, was when you broke the 4 minute mile for the first time. Tell us a little bit about, obviously, athletes, world class athletes across the world are doing it every single race, but that first time you do it, especially at a high school level, tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, I mean, it's probably still the most memorable like experience I have from my running career. Like for context, the year before, when I was in 10th grade, I ran um, 4:24 for the 1600-meter race, which was good enough to win my state meet, but South Dakota isn't very big, so it's not that competitive. So the next year, I was like, all right, running under 4:10 would be amazing. Like that's a very lofty goal. Like it's almost a state record from where I was from, and that seemed like if I could do that, I thought I'd pretty much have made it. And then the ball just kept rolling. I kept getting faster and faster in my races, and my previous best before I ran under four was 4:07, which I ran at Arcadia earlier in the season. And I came into the race with the slowest C time. And then my whole goal was just to try to win, and I ran the win. Naturally, it was a fast race. It was good conditions, and I crossed the line. I was just so happy I won. I didn't even know I broke four for a little bit, but just like hearing that was amazing. I mean, it's hard to believe at that time. Like it's pretty corny, but you just can't comprehend what you did for a long time. And now that has settled in, I was so thankful I had that opportunity to do that so early in my running career, because that just opened so many doors, and I'm extremely grateful for that.
Definitely, and it's a point that many people talk on in terms of running is so many people are bogged down on times rather than actually winning races, because winning races will come with fast times. Is that the mindset you have? Is there sometimes you go into a race obviously hoping more about the time rather than the position, or do you just believe they come hand in hand with each other?
Yeah, I mean, I'm very like I believe there's a time and place for everything, and there's a time to go for time, and there's a time for go to time, and there's a time to go for the win. Um, so like if I'm racing high schoolers, I'm never I'm never gonna be racing for anything other than the win. Like obviously I might want to run fast, but at the end of the day, I really want to win. And if I'm racing like I did a couple days ago when I'm racing professionals, I understand that it's very unlikely that I'll win, and I shouldn't like take the lead with a lap to go and risk blowing up and fading like to last and running a poor time if my goal is to run a time to get a qualification for a meet. But if I'm racing people my age, I'm all about going for the win.
That's a really good point. Tell us a little bit more about that in terms of, like you said, recently you were racing in the Brooks PR. You're fast enough now, even at your young age, to be racing professionals. That's the type of times that you're running. What's it like then going back, like going to the high school national championships, racing against high schoolers after just racing against loads of professionals?
Yeah, so I've only ever raced one pro race, and that was 2 days before my last high school race. So I didn't have too much experience with the pros, um, but it definitely gives you confidence because I was able to get third place and only lost by like a second to the winner. And I know those were some really good U.S. athletes. So being able to do that and run a super fast time, it gives you a world of confidence. And so like going into the next meet after that, I was like, none of these guys could run the time I just ran or probably place as good as I did in that meet, and I pretty much showed that I could be a pretty decent pro in the United States, and none of these guys could probably compete with that.
Yeah, definitely. It must give you, there's a line, I suppose, between confidence and arrogance at the same time. But you take every race as they come. It doesn't matter if it's high school national championships or if it's the one professional race. I suppose you, like you said, you're always going for that win either way.
Yeah, I mean it's always a fine line between arrogance and confidence, and often it's just like it depends on the individual interpreting to think if someone's arrogant or confident. I definitely come off as a confident guy. Sometimes people think it's arrogance,
Yeah.
but At the end of the day, I have like tons of respect for my competitors, and that usually shows by how nervous I get. Like going into a race, I'm super anxious, super nervous because I respect all the work these guys put in. I know how good they are. But at the end of the day, I'm not going to be scared of anyone, and I know I've worked really hard. And even if someone's outworked me a little bit, I'm confident that I can have the sharpness and the racing strategies that I'll have a good chance to beat them anyways. So I have that. I was born really competitive, and I think that helps a lot.
Definitely, and something we'll get into a little bit later on in the episode is a little bit more competitiveness within athletics. People do say run your own race, but in terms of an entertainment factor, which you have brought to all your most recent races, against all of the fastest high schoolers at the moment, that competitiveness, that little bit of entertainment compared to just racing, there's an element of we needing more of that in athletics that we'll definitely touch on as the episode goes on. But like you mentioned there, you do respect all the athletes that you have in your races, whether it's the professional race or the high school level. But high school level is borderline professional nowadays in terms of the standard that people like yourself, people like the young brothers, people like that, that are racing at a high school level now. It's borderline professional just because of the standard and the fast times that everyone's running.
Yeah, I mean, this year especially has been extremely competitive. I think the class of 2023 in the United States it's arguably one of the best classes, if not the best in the history. Just because like we had a race the other day when four guys went under four, and like people were barely talking about sub four athletes anymore, because obviously that's just what it takes to win like a national title in the mile. And just like with the 2 mile, like if you're not running on the U.S. top 10 list for high school, you're probably not going to win, honestly. Like it's just extremely phenomenal racing, and I think we're going to have the opportunity to do a lot of cool stuff going into the future.
Does that put more pressure on your training in the case of how fast people are running? If you have an unfortunate block of training and one of your competitors, like one of the young brothers or some of your teammates, has a good block of training, does that put even more pressure on your training and staying healthy just because of how fast everyone's running?
Yeah, I mean, you need to be in like excellent form to win. Like I had some unfortunate times in the indoor season where I couldn't train my best, doing a lot of cross training, and I was still able to like run at the top level of the national meets, but I was getting like probably like third through seventh in most of my races, even though I was still running extremely fast times that could have won other years. So yeah, you really have to be spot on. I really haven't had many hiccups in the outdoor season, but I mean, you pretty much have to be perfect. Like you can't be getting sick. Your injuries have to barely restrict you. And even just like if you have a slight off day, you could go from the favorite to getting 10th in a high class race. So there is the pressure, but I love the pressure, and I think I perform best under it.
Definitely. And in terms of staying injury free, how do you go on about doing that, or not even injury free, keeping any niggles or any slight pains do you have at bay as much as you can?
Yeah, I approach running in a pretty careful way. Like my mileage isn't very high, and I've progressed very slowly, and my workouts aren't anything crazy. I barely even I probably spiked up like 5 times this year in workouts, and usually that's just for strides. So I'm very careful. I know the most important thing is just consistency, so I try to keep it like that. Obviously, I do a little stuff, drink tons of water, eat a lot of food, stretch, roll out, do some lifting that helps you stay injury free. Yeah, so all that together just allows me to stay consistent, and that's why I've gotten where I am.
Definitely, yeah, and like we mentioned, it is so important nowadays to stay injury free, whether it's at a high school, collegiate, or a world on a world stage at a world and professional level. It's just the standard is getting too high to afford any long injuries that will prohibit your training. Obviously, we mentioned there your first ever sub 4 minute mile. Since then, you've ran a 3:57:53, making you the fourth fastest ever high school miler. compare that to first time going sub 4, because like you said, lots of people are going sub 4 nowadays. People aren't documenting high school sub 4 minute milers as much as they were because of the standard. So getting that time down even more is so important.
Yeah, I definitely was more excited to break four the first time just because I wasn't expecting to. And then when I broke it, when I ran 357, I was actually trying to go for like 353. And so I still won the race, so I can't be disappointed about that. But I honestly wasn't very happy to run 357. Um, it was a bit hot and the pace didn't go as we planned. So I was just kind of like, I'll take the win, I'll be happy with it. But I didn't really look at the time that much because I was just kind of expecting to run a bit quicker.
It's crazy nowadays hearing athletes like yourself who are so talented but still only in their senior year of high school being disappointed with a 357. I suppose if you said that a couple of years back, people would, they'd be jumping up and down with that time, and maybe even yourself a couple of years ago, you'd have
Hmm.
been delighted with that time.
Yeah, I mean, times are changing, and I mean, as training gets better and everything else gets better, like more science is introduced, you just expect to run a bit quicker. And so, like, even though it seems crazy to some people to hear me say that I'm not super thrilled about it, I just knew the place I was at, and I knew I could have ran quicker. And I ran a really good 1500 a couple days ago that kind of proved that. So yeah, I mean, it's just you gotta change with the times.
I mean, and in terms of your training, how does that look? How does that change in terms of trying to get faster, trying to run faster times, maybe even leading up to the first time going sub 4? Is your training changing at all compared to how fast everyone's running?
I mean, I don't really look that much at what other people are doing. Like I've had my coach. I've been working with my coach since for 3 years now, since 10th grade, and he does a lot of studying. He studies a lot of pro runners. He looks at like their training cycles before, a great performance they had. So he takes a lot from that. But we don't really look at what other people are doing because a lot of people are doing a lot more than me, and that's just not with what we want to do right now. We want to run a bit lower mileage, a little bit less hard sessions, but still get really good work in, really like smart. So that's the name of our game, is just training as smart as possible and becoming the best we can be um, without like overdoing it and like preventing me from improving a lot in the future. And so that's the main goal, is to just not stress about what other people are doing and focus on locking in on what my goals are for my running career.
Definitely, and you made a good point there in terms of not, I suppose, capping how much you can progress as you get through college and eventually into the pro scene. Is that something that you and your coach, like you said, do keep in mind in terms of, and it's something even Jakob Ingebrigtsen said after breaking the 2 mile world record, is people go too hard in training, and then obviously you're focusing on not burning out and capping how much you can progress through college and once you get onto the pro scene.
Yeah, I mean, I've thought about that quite a bit because obviously Jakob ran very high mileage from a young age. And so the conclusion I've pretty much come to is that hard training can look completely different. Like Jakob could be running 100-mile weeks, but his training might be just as hard as someone who runs 50-mile weeks and pushes extremely hard in workouts. Um, and so I think we approach training from a bit more of a lower mileage, but running workouts really hard standpoint. And I just think when I'm able to move up mileage and keep that same intensity, I'll become better each year. And that's proved to be true. Um, and right now, I think I've averaged like 45 to 50 miles a week this year. So I believe whenever I choose to bump it up in my running career and I think I'm ready and I won't get injured, I think I'll have a massive leap. And I think Jakob's completely right that if you go too hard early on, you might peak early and your body might not be fully matured and be fully ready to handle that. And you might have lost some potential you could have accessed if you would have been patient.
And there is a lot of stigma, especially for immature, maybe younger high school runners. There's stigma around doing such high mileage and copying what the pros are doing, like Jakob Ingebrigtsen, although he's one of the fastest 1500 meter runners of all time. he's able to take on board the high mileage and still run really fast in races. And a lot of maybe less mature athletes at a younger high school level are trying to replicate that. There's just stigma around running really high mileage.
Yeah, and I think there's nothing wrong about that, but I think if you're gonna run really high mileage, you have to be um, pretty perfect with how you do it. Like, Jakob is able to do that because he has tons of resources. He does all the lactate testing. He has really good environments. He has like, I'm sure he gets massages, and all of his conditions are extremely like changed and modified to suit him and make sure he's healthy and he can handle that. So if you're able to have a team like that that works around you to help you, you can probably get away, and that you'll probably perform your best running high mileage. But as a high schooler who maybe doesn't have proper nutrition, who maybe doesn't get enough sleep, if you try to run the same mileage, it's just not going to work out. Well, 99% of the time. Obviously, there's probably like phenomenons out there, but I believe that if you can have if you do it extremely smartly and do all the little things right, you can do that and still have a long, sustainable career. But I mean, the majority of high schoolers and a lot of pros aren't even willing to sacrifice to make their diet super good, to sleep like 10 hours a night. But if you're willing to do that, I think you can probably get away with running really high mileage and you'll benefit a lot from it.
But at the same time, you who's running at the highest high skill standard possible and doing 50 miles a week, but having really good quality sessions, it just shows that high mileage isn't everything. And I suppose the quality of the session as well needs to be taken on board. So it's definitely valuable for maybe some people to take a leaf out of your book who's not doing such high mileage, but at the same time is running at the highest level on a high skill stage.
Yeah, 100%. There's many ways to become good, and I believe if I would run 70, 80 miles a week, I believe I would be better. But I don't want to rush it, and I want to be good right now, but I don't want to peak, obviously. So I'm going to save that for later when my body is more matured and I can handle it, and then I'll get the maximum benefits.
Definitely, and be definitely looking forward to seeing how that helps and progresses your racing and your running, as you move on into the collegiate scene, which we'll jump into as we go through the episode. Obviously, we spoke about your sub 4 minute mile and your crazy fast 450 or 357 in the mile, but obviously you came national champion over the 2 mile, setting a new 2 mile a national record as well. Tell us about, first of all, becoming national champion, because like we said, we mentioned times versus winning the race, and in a championship race it is all about winning.
Yeah, it was a lot of fun. I'm not a super big fan of the 2 mile, but I had a bit of a hamstring strain earlier in the season, and I couldn't like do a whole bunch of speed. So naturally, I was training more aerobically, and I decided to enter in the 2 mile and give it a go. And I had my future teammate Connor Burns running the 2 mile with me, and it was really cool because the Brooks PR, which was the national championship, they actually gave us different colored uniforms than everyone else to show that we were returning champions. So we both had the same colored uniform, which was really cool. And we went in with the goal to just everyone wanted to run fast, but obviously still wanted to win. So it went out pretty hard, not super hard. We went out in like 425, I believe, or 424, and then it just ramped up. And I love racing. That's how I like to race. I love to just keep cranking the pace, and then see who can hold on the longest. And with a lap to go, I was pretty happy about how my race went. I was feeling pretty good, and we ended up closing in like 55 high. And me and my future teammate ran it in together. He was probably like zero point 0.2 seconds behind me, so it was pretty much like a perfect scenario. I couldn't have really drawn it up better. Yeah, and I was super happy to get that win, and I knew it was probably the lowest 2 mile field in history for high school. So I was super super stoked about that.
Definitely, and you're talking about the quality of the field and the quality of the fields that you have been racing in terms of a high school level recently. Obviously against Jackson, but then the young brothers as well, Leo and Lex, who over the past couple of weeks have been known as the good guys, and yourself and Jackson have taken on a little bit of a villain arc. Tell us a little bit about that, because that's something that I want to touch on in terms of making running and athletics a little bit more entertaining.
Yeah, so actually, Connor is
Connor, yeah, yeah, yeah.
known as the villain. Yeah, but yeah, I mean, I just think it's pretty funny. It's fun to have like rivalries, even if they're like, even if the people still are friends. I think if you can like hype up a rivalry, on social media and get people interested in a certain race, that a lot more people are going to care about it. So we had a lot of fun, just being pretty dramatic about that and hyping up that one race. And, a lot of people got really interested. It worked. And, at the end of the day, we all like cooled down together. We are all cool with each other. And I think the people really love that. And obviously, some people don't like it. Like they think it's like, they don't think it's good for the sport. But, there's always people who are gonna have those opinions. And
But tell us, why do you think people have those opinions? Because I know athletics for the longest time and still is a very it's I suppose it's a welcoming community as such, and there isn't much rivalries like the one that yourself and Connor and Leo and Lex are taking to the track. Obviously, like you said, you are cooling down together, and you do have a good relationship off the track. But why do you believe people, aren't so optimistic about those rivalries on the track?
yeah, I mean, it's hard to say because in other sports, there's tons of rivalries, and
Mm.
it seems pretty much accepted that, yeah, it's just entertainment. Like these people aren't terrible people. But for some reason, running has just it's been a super nice sport historically. And I don't think that has to change. I just think we can have a bit more fun. I think people can maybe learn to relax a little bit when it comes to being extremely nice on the track and just like finishing and walking off. And because like, I mean, I think it's shown that people like to hear people say like call their shots, like they want a little bit of like people's pride on the line. Like it just makes it really fun to watch. Like I would much rather watch two rivals go at it than just a bunch of friends, even if they are friends. It's just a lot better to humans naturally just like that certain amount of risk to reward. And when people are saying calling their shots, they're risking a little bit of their pride, which is fun for people to watch. So yeah, I mean, obviously, I think me and Burns have tried to change that with our rivalry with Lex and Leo. That chapter is probably going to come to a close because we're done with high school and we got bigger fish to fry in college. But I think we're going to continue to keep that same energy and keeping the sport lighthearted and fun.
Definitely, because even the people that aren't so crazy about the rivalries, because I was looking through your Instagram before coming on the show, and obviously you had the celebration where you were where you shushed Leo, which you'll talk a little bit about as well. But I was looking through the comments for that, and the people that even weren't so crazy about it, they're still engaging and interacting with the posts, and which is further pushing your online profile. It's pushing more posts that other outlets and other accounts are making about you and Leo and Lex and Connor, which is obviously great for your personal, I suppose, profile on and off the track.
Yeah, I mean, that's the main reason I think it's so good for the sport is even the people who don't like it, they're often the ones in the comments, and then when they're in the comments, it just shoots it to more and more people. And yeah, I mean, the shush was just kind of, uh, I knew it was gonna get a pretty like I knew it was gonna get a reaction.
Yeah.
And I think just because uh, I got to play the role of the villain, I felt like I wanted to end the story of like the rivalry with kind of a villain type action. And yeah, it did exactly what I thought it was gonna do. Like there was a lot of people talking about it, um, and I think it was just a great thing for the sport because I think people are gonna see that and they're gonna see, oh, me and Leo don't hate each other, but we can still have fun and do stuff like that. And I fully expect when Leo beats me sometimes for him to do something like that. Like we were talking about that, and like if he beats me in a 5K or a 15 in college, he'll probably have fun with and do something like that as well. And I just think people just need to take it a little less seriously and just enjoy it.
Definitely no, and I'm all for it. I love seeing that stuff because, like you said, track and field for so long has been too nice of a sport. You know what I mean? People finish such a competitive race and then they'll walk off the track like nothing happened. You know what I mean? Maybe a little bit on social
Hmm.
media, maybe a little bit after the finish line. It's all for entertainment purposes, and whether people like it or not, they're still engaging with it. So it's great for the sport. And that's one of the reasons why sports like football and whatnot get so much publicity is because of everything off the track as well that attracts people.
Yeah, I mean, football is a great example of how big it is, especially in the United States, or I guess, and European football. But yeah, like there's so many rivalries and people hype it up so much. And I mean, rivalries is just like the more people are engaged, the more money there is, the more betting that goes on. I mean, people can have their own opinions about that, whether it's good and bad, but it's just, I mean, a lot of good things come from those rivalries. And it just helps grow the sport past some other sports. And that's what I want to see for running. I want to see it become extremely big. And I just think that running is I think is gonna become really big eventually. Just because people love like F1, they've loved horse racing historically, and like track is like uh, people can really relate to it because they're not racing cars, it's humans racing. So
Yeah.
everyone alive is a human. So they can I feel like they can really get connected to the athlete, and once that happens, they can get really invested. It's just the sport needs to become more viewer friendly, and through that, rivalries are a way to do that.
Do you think the fan base and the great running from Nico Young in his high school career is what put Leo and Lex, I suppose, in a good light, and then yourself and Connor coming in and kind of taking that over a little bit is the reason they were considered maybe the good guys, and yous were not so much the good guys?
Yeah, I think it's just a lot of because Newbury Park has been known for a really long time, so they were like considered the top of high school distance running, and then the people who were like new people coming on and trying to like almost overthrow that, they could be more seen as the villains. But I also have like called myself the villain before, like when I raced against someone in their hometown, and my goal was to just kind of like quiet the crowd and make sure they didn't win. So that's probably part of where that came from. But yeah, I mean, I don't really think of myself as a villain or the hero, but I just like it's fun to play those roles within a race. Like it's just cool because the media can understand it. Like, oh, these are the good guys, these are the bad guys. Like, choose a side and cheer for those people. It just makes it really simple to consume.
Definitely, yeah, because with a lot of races that you do watch, it's you have the favourites of the race who's most likely to win, but at the end of the day, you have your favourite athletes, but you don't really mind who wins. But forming that, I suppose, solid fan base, maybe you could even call it, does make it more interesting for people to watch, and will force more people to tune in to the races as yourself and Leo and Lex progress through your collegiate career and inevitably onto your professional career. And I suppose on the topic of your collegiate career, you've committed to Oregon. Tell us a little bit about that. Was Oregon always, number one option for you?
Definitely not. I took an unofficial to Oregon like before I did most of my visits to other schools, and I pretty much decided I wasn't gonna go there. I did like 4 visits, and then Oregon was my last visit, and the only reason I chose to do an official visit there was because they got their new coach, Jerry Schumacher. And once I heard that Bowerman was going to be in Eugene, Jerry was going to be like the Oregon coach, it wasn't too hard of a choice just because I knew the opportunities are pretty much endless and I could become extremely fast and still not outgrow like the university. Um, so yeah, I mean, I'm going to Oregon to become not just one of the best in college, but hopefully one of the best in the world.
Of course, and Hayward Field as well, which is one of the greatest stadiums in the US for track and field, and to be able to train and race on that, and for it to have it to be your home ground, and obviously you raced on it recently. Tell us a little bit about that. Has it made you even more excited to go on now and become an Oregon athlete, knowing how good the track and the facility is?
Yeah, I mean, I think I would have gone to Oregon regardless of their facilities, but I haven't even like I probably won't like set in that I get a practice on Hayward Field um until like I'm actually doing it just because it's such a grand, stadium. It's hard to believe that I could just like walk in there and do a session. So yeah, it's going to be a lot of fun. It's going to be a super cool experience, and I'm really excited to live everyday life like that. But the most important I think is going to be the relationships with the people there, and still staying modest and trying to live life like to be like still the best runner and not just think, oh, I have all these good facilities, I'm probably going to be good. No, I gotta still be locked in and be doing all the little things right because it's not the flashy facilities that are going to make me good, and I just can't let that get to my head.
Definitely. How is your mindset going to change from becoming, some of the fastest high school runners, in terms of the mile and the 2 mile, and then going on to a collegiate level, racing some of the best athletes in the country, really moving up the ranks in terms of the competition. We'll get into the NCAA championships that were on there last week now in a couple of minutes, but how is it gonna change your mindset from maybe the attitude you had going into races, being one of the best, and now going into a collegiate level where the standard is going to shift completely?
I'm extremely excited. I'm really excited for the standard to move up, and I think that'll just push me to be even better. So yeah, I mean, I think this year I could have been competitive in the NCAA. So next year I'm going to go in with the mindset that I can compete with the best, and I'm just super excited to like be in a. It'll be like racing a national championship high school race whenever I step on the line. So uh, I'm a big competitor, and I love that part of track and field. Like that's why I love the sport so much is the actual races. So I'm excited to be in more competitive races and have the risk reward be higher.
And in terms of if we're taking the 5 and 10K times by Kai Robertson in the NCAA there last week or 2 weeks ago, and then going on to win the double in the NCAA, in terms of the times he ran, at the level of fitness that you're at now, you could definitely replicate that and go on and do great things next year in the NCAA. So watching that and seeing the results from them races must give you a great, load of confidence going into the collegiate scene.
Yeah, I mean, you probably won't see me in the 10K,
No.
possibly the 5K, but I'm definitely gonna probably focus on the 1500. And like when I was watching that race, I was like, I could definitely see myself in here and being competitive, and that does give me a lot of confidence. And I know I still need to get a decent bit better if I want to be winning those races, but I'm confident I can make those steps I need to. I think it'll fit really well into my progression, and I think I'm really ready for this next step.
And will we continue to see the celebrations through your races in on the collegiate scene, or like you said, will you become maybe a little bit more modest in your early years as a duck?
Yeah, I mean, it's really hard to say because you really don't know and like until like the opportunity presents itself. Uh, you know, if I have a big rivalry with someone and we're both into it, I mean, I wouldn't mind like celebrating if I beat them, and I would expect them to do the same to me and that same sort of fashion. But if if I don't feel like doing it, I just won't. But if I do, I probably will. So it's just, I mean, it's hard to tell, but I'm definitely not opposed to it, and I think uh, it would it would definitely keep help getting people interested.
Definitely, and we had you mentioned there Oregon and Bowerman as well, and all two athletes or one athlete in terms of Cooper Tier that we've seen go through the Oregon system and now as part of Bowerman Track Club. I've been seeing in some comment sections thrown about your comparison to Cooper Tier, and now the great things he's gone on to achieve after being a Duck. Have Cooper Tier and Cole Hawker been people that you've looked up to and been inspired by over the past couple of years, and has that played into your decision to go and commit to Oregon?
I mean, not a huge role part of it. I look up to Cooper Tier and Cole Hawker a lot, and Cole Hawker actually paced the Pro 15 I ran, which was extremely cool moment for me. Um, but you know, Oregon has had so many good guys over the years. I think that's part of like when you like look at their school records, you see like, oh, I have to be like pretty much one of the best in the world to get these, and that was the big appeal is um, it won't be crazy if I run crazy times, like, and that's what I want. I want to be pushed extremely hard to get to those levels where I could get a school record someday, and if I get that school record, I'll be one of the best in the world. And so I want the ceiling to be extremely high. I want the pressure to be high, whereas if I run something crazy, in my eyes, that other people may be like, oh yeah, but it's not that good in comparison to this athlete back then. And I think that's the appeal for me personally, just how I like to think about athletics is I just want to be pushed really hard.
That's a great mindset to have in comparison to being thrown off by the great times that the Oregon school records hold due to athletes like Cooper Tier and Cole Hawker. Instead of, I suppose, being scared by it, you're using it as motivation to work even harder and to race even faster.